Oh, hi! Welcome to the Piston Palace. I'd like to show you around. I'm Jeff Goldstein, and we'll start right over here. So the Piston Palace is a place where we keep all of our car collection and car memorabilia. I'm really anxious to share it with you, but before we get into the cars, I want to show you a few things in particular that really make it special. And of course, you're going to say to yourself, this guy's obviously possessed by cars. I want to try to get right to the beginning. I'm not exactly sure where it started, but I believe it had something to do with these models right here. When I was a kid, Matchbox models were the first introduction for us guys that had a car inclination. And at the time, my allowance was 50 cents a week, and I could buy one of these models a week. And that's what I did. I'd pedal up to the hardware store where they had a display very similar to this. In my adult mind, this is what my 10-year-old mind remembered what the Matchbox look like at the store. So I'd buy one for 10 cents. Now this is in 1967. In 1968, they raised the price to 55 cents each. Then you can imagine the dilemma that caused me when I couldn't buy one of these Matchbox cars a week. But I did learn a lot about cars and styling and colors and manufacturers, and I also learned a little bit about commerce because my friends also were into the Matchbox cars, and we would trade cars back and forth, and that taught me a little bit about wheeling and dealing. I never became a car dealer per se, but these Matchbox cars were about as close as I came. So from the Matchbox cars, I graduated to plastic model kits. Now these are some of the plastic model kits that I've collected over the years. A lot of them were from my original collection, and what I liked about these was you could build them three ways: stock, custom, or drag, kind of a racing configuration. But they allowed you to customize the car, so you could actually build the model the way that you would want the car to look. And that was a tremendous learning experience for me. I got to put together cars, and I'd take them apart and put other pieces from other models on there. These models were really an important a stepping stone to my love of automobiles and my knowledge about automobiles too. So I pay kind of tribute to them in my office here. I love to have them around me. I like looking at them. Now below the model cars, I've got my library, and in here I've collected books about automobiles, a wide range of automobiles, from hot rods to dragsters to antique cars, and there's just a wealth of information here about cars. And I've also got binders that I've made about each car in the collection. These binders are important to me because I'm a stickler for details, and I like to have the original sales manual, all the receipts for what I did with the car at the time. So I've got a lot of manuals like that. Let me show you a few more over here. This is similar to what the collection is. You can never have enough books. The books have the knowledge that you really need to understand about automobiles, and collecting them, repairing them, and even showing them. Here at the Piston Palace, we've collected a lot of art. And the main categories are illustrative art and concept car art. What we have behind me here is a collection of illustration art that was done by the team of Art Fitzpatrick and Van Kaufman. And if you look closely, you can see their initials are on the pieces. They were one of the few artists that were allowed to sign their work. And what I liked about this work was that illustrative advertising kind of was out of fashion by the 60s. People had illustrated cars from the 1930s up to advertise them, and by the 60s, photography had taken over. The difference was that the photography of the 60s was a little bit goofy. They didn't have Photoshop. They didn't have the ability to render cars like this team of Art Fitzpatrick and Van Kaufman. And the really cool thing that they did was they had the ability to make the cars look a little bit longer, a little bit wider, and beautiful reflections. Now, the way that this team worked, Art Fitzpatrick was in Connecticut. He had a studio there, and his partner Van Kaufman was in California. Fitzpatrick did the cars, and he would cut the car out and mail it to Van Kaufman. If you look closely at this piece here, you can see that it's lifting a little bit there on the bumper, just to give you an idea of how carefully the car was cut out. Van Kaufman would go back and he would fill in the windshield, and together that would be the package that they would present to Pontiac for the ads. If you're interested in this type of art, there's a book coming out by Robert Keel called Fitz and Van, and go fitsandvan.com and you'll be able to order the book, and it has a lot of explanation about it. I was always fascinated with this type of art. So I was able to buy a lot of these pieces right from Fitz. He passed away several years ago, but he was kind enough to take me into his studio and show me what he was doing. And why they're so meaningful to me is because as a boy, I would save these ads. The ads were in all the magazines, from Life magazine to the Post, and they were just the most striking ads. The other automobile companies didn't have advertising like this, and so I'd cut them out and I'd kind of paste them on my wall, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that did that, because you can't help but be enamored by them. Pontiac really benefited by these ads, and John DeLorean was the head of the Pontiac motor division at the time, and he insisted on just the team of Fitzpatrick and Van Kaufman to do their advertising work. And Pontiac achieved great sales success. Not only were the cars terrific, but they were so well advertised, and part of the reason is these illustrations. So now I'm going to show you the workshop. Follow me. Now this is a working workshop, but we've adorned it with some artwork that I want to take a minute and describe. This is concept car artwork, a little different from the illustrative art that you saw on the other side. These are the designs that the car designers were thinking of. It's completely blue sky. Whatever they had on their mind, they drew and presented it to the styling bosses, and hopefully it would be incorporated in a car to be built. This art is very, very rare. A lot of it was destroyed. What you're seeing here is part of the collection we have here. But what would happen is car designers would draw what was on their mind, and the styling bosses like Bill Mitchell or Harley Earl would come in, and they would pick out the pieces that they liked the best. Now this piece right here is a piece of lobby art. This was done by Paul Gallan, and it hung in the Pontiac styling studios. It really wasn't a piece of styling art. It was what they call lobby art. And Paul Gallan was not only a great car stylist, but he was also a fine artist. It's very rare that the car stylist would also draw such beautiful people. A lot of times the people wound up like this, just a little bit goofy, a little bit cartoonish. Now in this case, this was a piece done by Carl Renner, and Carl was really anxious to have Harley Earl see how beautiful the car was that he designed, but he thought if he added a leggy girl in there, that might assure that his piece got attention. So these two pieces were done for me by Brad Leisure. These aren't original old concept drawings, but they were done in the old concept car style. Both of these cars, this one is the Cadillac La Spada. That was a concept car that was actually built, and Brad Leisure did this for me for my 50th birthday, and we used it as the invitation to the 50th birthday. The one above it, Brad did as well, and that was a thank you note that I had sent. But by that time, I said to Brad, you know, my wife's a brunette. Do you think you could change the girl over to a brunette? And he agreed, and so there you have that one. So this is actually a fantasy piece by Dick Nesbitt that gave you an idea. This car was never built, but in Dick's mind, maybe it should have been built. It's a bathtub Nash convertible. What a cool car that would have been. Dick had a great rendering style, and still does, and I thought he captured that car very beautifully. Above it is a proposal for a Cadillac, and that was really just supposed to be the trim on the Cadillac. But you can see what a beautiful concept that might have been. I often wonder if the Cadillac would have sold even more cars had they gone with a trim level like that. So you see the art collection that we have in here. I don't want you to think it's not a working shop. We're working on this 32 Ford hot rod. We call it the Piston Palace Special. We've actually built this car from the ground up here, and we started with a bare chassis. And what we're trying to do is build it in the way that the old hot rodders did in the late 40s and early 50s. It's a flathead Ford-powered car, and we just finished installing hydraulic brakes. Now I know that seems silly, but these cars didn't have hydraulic brakes. They had rod brakes, which were a totally mechanical system. So that was an upgrade, and that's a typical upgrade that hot rodders would have done back in the day. So this is my workbench, and these are some of the tools that we have. I guess my point in showing you this isn't to show you a dirty workbench, but just to let you know that we're really working in here. I've got a group of friends, very dedicated, wonderful friends, that come over here and help me out with these cars. I don't know it all, and it's great to have people that can come over, especially the old timers that worked on these old hot rods, and will say, you know, Jeff, I've got a special tool for that, and it makes things so much easier. So now you see our shop truck. This is a 1972 Chevy pickup truck, and this is one of the first vehicles that I bought after I bought the building. What happened was when I bought this building, I thought I'll never need more garage space than this. And my wife said, you know, we're going to need some kind of a truck to move the porch furniture from the house into storage over there. I had no idea that we were going to include porch furniture, but I loved the idea of having a pickup truck. So I put the feelers out to my friends. I knew exactly what kind of pickup truck I wanted, 67 to 72 short bed pickup truck. And it's a funny thing. I found that when I have the money and I have the garage space, magically the right car always seems to appear. And so I remember saying to my wife, I found the pickup truck, it's perfect, and this is it. And this pickup truck came from Massachusetts. It was owned by a guy that kept it for many years in beautiful condition. It has 57,000 original miles on it, and it had air conditioning, was an automatic, and just filled all of my requirements for a pickup truck. It's really a little bit too pretty to use as a shop truck, but we still do use it, and indeed, once in a while, it gets used to move the porch furniture back and forth. So decorating in here kind of came a little bit organically. I'd find one piece, I'd put it on the shelf, I'd get another piece, add it to the shelf, and it just kind of grew from there. But you can see that I love advertising, and the graphics involved with advertising were always really fascinating for me. Even the neon clocks and the signage, they really had a neat way of marketing automobiles back in the day. And I always just found it fascinating, and so I've decorated my shop with all this stuff. So before we get to the rest of the cars, I want to show you an interesting exhibit of Fisher Body Craftsman Guild models. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with the Fisher Body Craftsman Guild. I wasn't either till I met a car stylist who explained that his whole career came about as a result of this contest. General Motors sponsored the contest. It began in 1931 and went up till 1968. These posters on the wall kind of describe the whole story, but the contest began with teenagers building these coaches. A coach model like that was the symbol of General Motors Fisher Body division. And in 1938, Harley Earl said, well, why do we have these kids making coaches? We're in the car business. Why don't we have the kids make cars? It was a brilliant decision. And so what happened was the kids had the ability to design and build their own car. It had to be exactly 1/12 scale, and submit it to Detroit for a placement in this contest. Now, the prizes were phenomenal. The very top prize was a fully paid 4-year college scholarship to the college of their choice. A lot of the kids went on to become car designers because General Motors followed their career through college, and then they were able to hire the best. In my opinion, that single factor was the reason that General Motors cars were so good looking in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, because they had this young talent. The kids brought ideas that were unrestrained from conventional wisdom. They had a completely open mind. Nobody said to them, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so they were certainly influenced by the cars that were being built, but they had a wide-eyed ability to design. And the other thing that General Motors found was the craftsmanship skills. That was important to them as well. They not only wanted somebody that had an eye for design, but they wanted to have somebody that could follow through. So the kids had 1 year to build the model, and General Motors provided some instruction. Every few months they'd come up with a Guild News newsletter, and in the newsletter there would be articles about how to build your model. Most of the kids started with wood blocks like this, and basically would hand carve the model. In 1953, General Motors figured they ought to supply the tires. Before that, like this model was built in 53, the guy that built this model, his name is George Chartier, and he had to build the tires too. Behind each model is a little bit of a information card about each model and the age of the builder and the award that they won. Over here is a photograph of from a 2004 reunion, and these are all guildsmen that went on to become car designers. Most of them became car designers for General Motors, and as a result of this contest. The contest really opened doors, and I want to give you a specific example right here with these three models. Now, these three models were built in Providence, Rhode Island by three brothers, the Simone brothers. Jerry, the oldest brother, he built this model, but what his influence for building the model was that their dad sat him down at the dining room table one night and said, "Boys, I've got enough money to put a roof over your head and food on the table, but college, you're going to have to figure that out yourself." So Jerry heard about this contest where the top prize was a college scholarship. So he said, well, I'm going to build a model, and this is the model that he built, and by golly, he won a contest. He won a scholarship, and here's his trophy, by the way, and so the middle brother, Gene, he said, well, if my brother can do it, I can do it. So he built a model, and he also won scholarship money. And finally, the youngest brother, Tony, he said, well, if my other brothers can do it, I can do it too. So this is a really unusual situation where the three brothers entered award-winning models and did so well. Now, Jerry became a car designer for Ford Motor Company. Gene became a stockbroker and financial advisor, and Tony became an internationally known school teacher. But these jobs they would have never had the opportunity had they not had built these models and gone to college as a result of the help from the Fisher Body Craftsman Guild. Now, the contest ended in 1968. I was 11 years old and too young to participate, but boy, I would love to have participated in this contest. Now, if anybody would like to know more about the Fisher Body Craftsman Guild, there's a couple of great books that were written by John Jacobus on the Fisher Body Craftsman Guild. And these books really have the whole history very well documented. Well, now we're in the Piston Palace showroom. And what I've tried to do here is replicate a 1950s car dealer showroom. And my feeling about that was that cars always look best on the showroom floor. Now, what I did, I not only replicated the inside, but I tried to replicate the outside. If you use your imagination, we're standing here and there's like a glass wall here, and we're looking into the showroom at the new cars. So these neon signs were really special to me. You can see that we have one from each of the 5 General Motors divisions. And I loved the neon, and I particularly like the reflection of the neon on the shiny painted cars. In the day, these were probably 1940s, early 50s signs, And what would happen is birds would make nests in the little holes where the neon went through the porcelain sign, and the bird nest would fall into the sign, rot out the bottom with some time, and nobody wants a rotted sign in front of their building, so the neon signs got replaced. And unfortunately, what they replaced them with are these plastic signs with fluorescence inside. It just didn't have the magic of these. If you look on the cars, you look on the shiny paint of the cars, you can see these beautiful squiggly lines that is kind of the neon reflection. And to me, that was a little bit of magic. So like any good dealer showroom, there's always a little bit of a waiting area, and I tried to replicate that waiting area here. These chairs came out of the employee lounge of a Kresge Kmart store. It was amazing to me that the management at Kresge Kmart would think so much of their employees to have them sit on their break in these plush chairs. But I thought they were also very similar to the chairs that a car dealer might have had in the 50s for their customers to wait while their car is being repaired. I want to take your attention over to this lamp for a second, because I made this myself, and it's made out of a 1962 Oldsmobile Starfire steering column, and I even used the wheel cover as a base. And what happened with this was that I had this concept that I wanted to make furniture out of car parts, and so the 62 Olds Starfire steering wheel, as you can see, is a really dramatic steering wheel, very deep like that. And I was putting it together on the workbench at home, and my wife came down and said, well, geez, honey, wouldn't it be great if you could get the directional signal to turn the light on and off? And you know, I looked at that and I said, that would be a great idea, but this switch is made for 12 volts DC, and here I'm trying to put 110 volts AC in. I don't think the switch is strong enough to handle it. So I talked to an electrician friend of mine. I explained the problem and I showed him the switch, and he says, Jeff, this is Rhode Island. People don't use that lever. And so we ended up just putting a regular light switch on. Now, the other table that I want to show you over here is, this is the second table that I built, and this I didn't put a lamp in this. This is just a coffee table. But what this is, a 1958 Edsel steering wheel, and that's a 1958 Edsel wheel cover. And the reason I chose the Edsel was because it was one of the only cars that not only had a push-button select transmission, but the push buttons were right in the middle of the steering wheel. And I just thought, well, you know, that's about as cool a steering wheel as you could possibly get to make furniture out of. So that's how that piece came to be. So before I start telling you all about the cars, I'd like to show you a couple of interesting things in here. This display right here represents what would have been in maybe the parts department or the back of a new car dealership. And what's interesting to me is that each of the General Motors divisions had their own products. Like Buick had this line of private label products, and Cadillac had a gorgeous line, and even Chevrolet and Oldsmobile had their own products. And this particular case came out of the back of an old Chevrolet dealer that had long gone out of business. I bought just these 4 pieces. They were lying on the ground, and I kind of assembled this display case and collected the cans and bottles over the years. But I thought everybody would like to see how the private labeling operated back in the 50s. Part of the display, I just thought it would be neat to kind of put these price stickers on here. I don't really know that's the prices that this stuff sold for, but I bet I'm not that far off. So what we have here is a collection of dealer emblems. Now, these dealer emblems were fascinating to me because if you saw an emblem like this on the back of a car, chances are the car had never been painted. It was probably an original car, and I liked that. I liked the fact that it might be a low mileage car, and because what would happen is, as soon as the car got traded in, the dealer said, well, I got to take that guy's name off and put my name on there. And so some guy had a whole job of filling the holes and painting over the back or putting the other emblem on the car. Customers hated it when dealers put these things on their car. I remember my dad would say, hey, don't put one of those emblems on the back of the car, please. But a lot of times the dealers did it anyhow. And not only that, but the people that they assigned to put the emblems on the back were sometimes lot boys at the very entry level of the dealership. So they didn't always apply a lot of precision. So sometimes they wound up a little bit crooked. Now, this is a collection of 80 dealers from Rhode Island, and a lot of the dealers have gone out of business. Another interesting thing that I found about the automobile dealership business is that when the dealership got sold, they threw all of this stuff away. They didn't want anything to do with the last guy's name of the dealership, so a new guy would buy it and he'd want his name. So when I'd go to the dealers and I say, hey, do you have any of those old dealer emblems? No, we threw all that stuff away. So they were a little bit difficult for me to find, and they were made of the cheapest metal, so they really didn't last very long. What happened was they went from drilling holes and metal emblems to these kind of plastic emblems, and eventually they went on just to stickers. As I collected these, I struggled with how to display them. And I loved the graphics, and I loved what they represented, but this silhouette idea came to me while I was building this building. And what I've tried to replicate here is, do you remember in the back of car dealer showrooms, they'd have that little room, and they'd bring you in, and that was like the deal room, you know, they had a little desk, and they'd sit you down there, and you'd sign up to buy the car. Well, this right here is my replication of the door. This door actually goes nowhere, by the way, but this is the door to that deal room. And I've got a sign on here, the new car manager. And down the other end, I'll show you in just a minute, the used car manager. So here we are at the back of the showroom, and I just want to show you for a second. These are catalog racks that came from an old Chevrolet dealer, and these things were so hard to find. What's interesting is that the dealers, everything for one model year, once that model year was over, they threw everything out. A sign like this, that was old stuff, got rid of it. And so it was very hard for me to find stuff to replicate the inside of a car dealer showroom. And on the catalog rack, I've just kind of displayed some books and magazines that were interesting to me, kind of period stuff. But I want to show you over here, this is the used car manager side, and on this side, I've got some more of those dealer emblems, and this is a group of emblems that represent Massachusetts dealers. Now, believe me, there's a lot more dealers in Massachusetts than this, but these seem to be the most interesting emblems and the only emblems that I could find at the time. What we're looking at here is a collection of promotional models. These promotional models were kind of special to me because they were given away as gifts to very lucky boys and girls when their parents would buy a car. It just so happened that the dealer, after the deal was made, would present to Junior or his sister a little card just like the one Mom and Dad got. And General Motors was smart enough to make the cars in exactly the same color. So every color was available in the same model that they had. And these model cars had wheels that rolled, and these cars got played with by kids. So any of these that survived is really pretty rare. They weren't that durable, and a lot of times I think they got blown up and crashed, and so that this collection survived at all is kind of a miracle. Now, what I have here at the top shelf is a collection of Corvettes from about 1963 to about 1974. And then on the shelf below that, these are GTOs. And then below that are Pontiac Bonneville convertibles, Chevrolet Impala convertibles, and finally pickup trucks. And these are all my favorite cars, and there's one that represents each year. So the models, the promotional models, are only available during that model year, and after that, you couldn't get them. So it's really a pretty rare collection. So the other thing that you'd find in a new car dealership in the 50s and 60s was a display where they would advertise a radio, because the radios didn't come with cars. This was something that the dealers could sell you afterwards to make a few extra bucks. And they'd say, "Now, Mr. Jones, you'd like a radio in your car, right?" And Mr. Jones would walk over here and he'd say, "Let me demonstrate it for you." And he'd flip the switch like this, turn the radio on. See how great that sounds? Imagine that in your car. And Mr. Jones, of course, would inevitably buy the radio. So that's how radios were marketed back in the day. So just one more thing, before we start talking about the cars, I've got to explain this billboard. This is my replication of a real full-size billboard, and what happened was I got the pieces for this billboard from a closed Pontiac dealership. What they used to do on new car introduction day, which was a very exciting time when the new cars were unveiled, they would paste up or cover up all the windows in the dealership, and they'd have like a new car introduction evening, and it was a special event. And so this particular billboard they used to cover up the windows of the dealership, and then somebody very neatly and carefully folded up each of the sections and put them on the top shelf of the parts department in the dealership. The dealership closes. It's closed for 20 years. And a friend of mine happens to be renovating the building, and he says, there's all these racks that used to hold the parts. And on top of the racks, I found these billboard pieces. So he showed me what he had, and I thought, oh my God, that would be the perfect thing for this end wall. So we pieced the whole thing together, and here you have a '65 Pontiac ad, much larger than life. And a friend of mine built the frame around it, and we put up the lights to replicate just what a billboard might have looked like in 1965. I think it's a fitting end for the showroom.
Thank you everybody for watching. Be sure and hit the like button and subscribe.